A rusty armor waking up after centuries of slumber to a decaying and crumbling world. Haunted barren cityscapes that tell the story of past trauma. A schizophrenic recluse finding human connection in her dreams. And something different that I'll leave for the end. These are the virtual worlds we'll explore today, all of them tied by darkness, by the instability of crumbling spaces, both mental and physical, by decay and hopelessness, by the abyss. Come along with me in this descent so that we might come out on the other side and see the starry sky once more. People love to complain about how terrible the gaming industry is getting and about how every major developer is only in it for the money and doesn't care about the fans. And that obviously gets views because people like to get angry. But for me it's just like complaining about the Billboard Top 40 for having bad songs. First of all, someone will still like them. Actually, a lot of someones. You need only to look at the sales. There will always be a person enjoying the new Assassin's Creed 15 or unfinished Bethesda game, just like there will always be somebody listening to Imagine Dragons on repeat. That's fine. If you get angry at other people's taste or allegedly lack thereof, you should grow up. It's a big industry, and in big industries, the imperative is money! That's just how it works, and it obviously does work for them. Complaining is not gonna change that. But by focusing on it, you might run the risk of ignoring the booming world of independent developers. We are living in what is arguably the best moment for indie devs. Making a video game has never been as accessible as it is today, and thousands of talented people are creating unique and soulful projects which slowly but surely explore concepts that the world of AAA would never touch. It's on such projects that I want to focus today. Some of this barely even qualifies as a game. They're first and foremost deeply personal works of art that need to be approached with an open mind and explored on their own terms. Let's talk about the first entry to give you an idea. Abyssal Somewhere is without a doubt one of the most striking gaming experiences I've had in a long time. The project is from 2018 and was developed by No Noise. There are already 2 videos on YouTube that I know of diving into this game, one by Greylink and the other by Backpack Comics. But I haven't watched them to not be swayed in my interpretation of it. They're probably more thorough than me though, so please check them out. Abyssal Somewhere is an incredibly unique and explorative piece of art, and I advise you to play it for yourself, just like all entries in this video, before watching any further. They're all free to play on itch, and you'll find the links in the description. The game starts in total darkness, with the words, "It's dead." Shapes and lights, out of focus, become visible as the player realizes they can move the camera. The words keep coming. "It's somewhere strange. It wakes up. A dream." And there we are, a thin and rusted-over armored being, with a shield on its back and a sword on its hip. We're in a strange room, half tiles and half concrete, with these 2 giant wheels emanating light. If we interact, the text says, "Raw slabs of concrete." The light seems to emanate from the surface. There's also a little walkway with a metal mesh blocking the path. Iron threads obstruct the passage. No way through. Behind the 2 wheels, we can find a way out of here. We come to a big concrete hallway with rebar sticking out of the ground and what appear to be stone statues sitting on the ledges in both directions. They seem to have either white faces or white masks softly glowing in the darkness. If we keep going right, we can find an iron gate with inscriptions, of which many are occluded by rust, and most are unreadable. One on the doorframe you can read. "One cannot tell if this is shrine, cell, or catacomb. Evenly spread, a stillness goes all the way through the depths." We can't proceed this way, so we go back and follow the hallway. On the way, we find one of the statues in a different position. We can interact with this bent statue. This figure of stone has a crooked waist. Whatever's inside lost its will to get out. We tread on, passing this peculiar protrusion in the wall. After the world's noisiest gate, we find a statue with a glowing white harpoon lodged in it. It's sharp and of an indecipherable material. We can take it out. A few steps back, we find a passageway along the wall. This takes us to a small bridge over what looks like shifting water, but the game comments that it seems too dark to be water. Moving forward, we start getting a better idea of the scale of this place, which suddenly reminds me of the megastructure from Blum, for obvious reasons. In the following room, which prompts a sudden camera shift, we find a human body. A dead person. It seems to be holding the door shut. They died underwater, drowning. The body is tangled between the door and a wire. And here we can use the harpoon we've collected to snap the wire. But even so, the door is still stuck. But we do see that the body was holding onto a stone scripture. It tells of how it rained and how they were sorry, and of weeping and to please stop the water. Sorry to whom? Interesting. To the side, we can jump below, finding a smaller hallway with what looks like water pipes. The hallway gives way to a room with a huge drop leading seemingly into darkness. We take the plunge. Stopping on what looks like a bridge surrounded by a pitch-black void, the only other thing in view is these streetlights in the distance. So we move towards them. More text shows up, telling us that when others are close, we should take arms. So we extract our sword and grab our shield. On the right side of the bridge, there are some stairs leading down to another platform, but there seems to be nothing of interest here. If we drop down into the void, we land back on the bridge. Going forward, we see emaciated human shapes, ghostly and see-through. When we attack them, this happens. If we keep moving, we encounter more and more of them, some still and harmless, others aggressive, so we have no choice but to slay them. Although maybe the right word would be displace them. On the bridge below, we find a different type of ghostly figures. These seem taller and stronger than the previous ones, and they hold tall harpoons in their hands. They do not react to our presence, and we can't harm them. We also notice that they're standing over a road, and seeing as the path forward is blocked by bent rebar, we've no choice but to drop down. Here it seems like there's not much to do but to fall further below. And below again. We come to a narrow bridge, at the end of which there is a doorway leading into another concrete structure. Here we, surprise surprise, have to go down some more, dropping through these luminous screens that dissipate as we traverse them. Finally at the bottom, we come out in a hallway identical to the one from the start. More text appears, reading, "From below the gates emerged unstoppable giants. Headless and of stone, they came of their own free will. Yet no one really knew why. Those who could took the harpoon and waited." If we go right, the path is blocked by concrete limbs that almost look like roots growing up from the structure itself. Turning the other way, we come across another very noisy iron gate, behind which more ghosts wait. Here we also see for the first time one of the statues in a standing position, giving us a taste of their actual size. Behind it there's also a bent gate, but it won't give way. Pushing on, we suddenly start hearing a terrifying noise like metal banging on concrete, and we see whatever this is emerge from the shadows. This giant thing is moving in our direction, and so we flee as the ghosts take up their harpoons and start throwing them towards it. We flee backwards and see that the bent gate is now gone. We slip through and find ourselves in another bridge over dark waters, but it's a dead end. The giant's hand reaches in and catches us. The screen turns white, then static invades it, filling our vision with abstract shapes. The light comes back and we hear the sound of rainfall. More text appears. "The stone is slippery. Waves roar below." Our ironclad protagonist wakes up once more in the same room from the start. The light unbearable this time, and with water seemingly coming out of the ceiling, covering up the floor. And so we move to the now familiar hallway, also filled with water, and see red lights at the right end. This time the inscriptions on the gate are all, without exception, unreadable. So, again, we go back the other way. This time our traversal is hindered by something. We can barely make it out, but it looks like long white arms are coming out of the water and pushing us back whenever we come close. We have to wait for their swing and then go forward. Suddenly, a huge wave hits us and floods the hallway, turning our vision into a static-like mess and throwing dark bodies all around us. As we move forward, it almost looks like these follow us, even though they seem dead. Slowly making our way, we reach another statue, this one bent over and glowing red, and we get a prompt. Listen to whispering. 16 whisperers whisper 16 words. They tell of holding all the blame, of their covered bodies, of being concealed into harsh concrete. Even so, they speak and weep and feel sorry and lonely. But underwater, it all seems gibberish. Is it meant for someone else? When we get back control of our character, a radiant tall white silhouette appears, and it looks like it has wings. The first thing one might think of, perhaps, is an angel. Another message appears. Voices, water and rain seem distant now, and we realize that the space around us has morphed once more into the starting room. This time we can find a tower viewer here, and when we look through it, we see this. Is this the angel-like entity from before? And so we do what we always do, get back into the hallway. The gate on the right has different inscriptions we can read this time. Below was found, still intact, yet they were in fragments. They don't think another. The soothing presence of the gate and their watchfulness, they don't think nor realize, they make this anxious. Going back the usual way, we come across a statue and the interact prompt says, face. The face of a creature deprived of name. It barely shines. And yeah, if you remember the first time around, the faces of the statues glowed softly. Another one gives us the message, these are the bodies of the once watchers. They have been put under jagged rocks so that they may not go further. For theirs is the nature of stone, and the nature of life is not so. We pass once more the protrusion on the wall, and this time we can turn it. This activates some sort of light that starts flying through the hallway. The next statue prompts another string of text. Still the humans taught them of life, and they felt it was such the hardship that they felt compassion. Then the standing one says, they taught the humans the secrets of heaven and earth, and in their compassion they were humans, and they were lost. If we reach the end of the hallway, we find the gate bent to a point where it's unusable, so we need to go back through the usual nook that hides the dark waters. During all of this, the light keeps regularly flying in the same direction, and it seems to have no use, at least for us. What it does seem to indicate is that we might be in a circular room, seeing as it always comes from the same way at regular intervals, but I don't know what significance this holds. When we get to the little bridge for the third time now, we have the option to jump in the tar-like waters below. As we plummet through the void, the sound peaks in a terrible cacophony and we finally find our brutal way to a new ground. This is the land of Ka Dijirra. It faced doom 6,000 years ago. Ironclad being, it has to be crossed to get to the underworld, and to heaven next. There one may ask life itself why you are the only one alive. Now, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but according to Wikipedia, Ka Dijirra should be an Akkadian interpretation of the Sumerian word Babilim, which in the modern translation would be Babylon. And I didn't know this, but it literally means Gate of God. So the connection here, given the context, is very probable. Keep that in mind. We are surrounded by sand dunes, ruins of a kingdom that was, and the all too familiar darkness. If we climb the first dune to our left, we find this stone obelisk with scripture on it. Most of it is written in an unreadable language, but some of the lines are readable. A question. Who is the deity that we shall worship with our offerings? Who is it that bestows force and vigor, whose guidance all, even the gods, invoke? The following lines and all names are defaced. On the next side, there is a record of the rulers of the land. The titles are all still there, but the names are defaced. In the barren landscape that surrounds us, we can at times see apparitions of more ruins and of a radio tower? When exactly are we? We move towards a large gate from which a sliver of light seems to shine through, an incredible contrast to the shadows which surround us. From this light rises the angelic silhouette from before, and our protagonist brandishes his sword. If we step too close to the entity, giant arms appear to protect it, knocking us back. Other, lesser figures emerge from the sand. They have a symbol covering their heads and the weapons they hold. After that connection from before, I'm wondering if this could be Sumerian cuneiform or some other form of ancient writing. I haven't been able to find its meaning at this time though. We can get near the white-winged being, and these, what I'm assuming to be guardians, can be hit, but keep coming back. But then, amongst them, we can spot a lonely, wandering figure. A thin, hunched-over silhouette covered in static. Our task becomes pretty clear. We slay it. The screen becomes fuzzy as our protagonist slumps down to his knees. A message appears. These are wastes. There are only remnants of ghosts here and beyond, and of beings of stone. What could anyone seek in these places? At this point, the giant arm of the angel, now brandishing his sword, swings towards us. But it seems like our protagonist somehow finds the power to parry this attack with his blade. Mighty and stone alike were drowned, but death is so much more than cold. The same symbols that we've seen on the Guardians from before now form a hallway, at the end of which stands the angel. Our protagonist assumes a different stance and seems reinvigorated by a newfound power. He glides now instead of walking, and our attacks become a swirling sword swing that launches us forward. Again, the task seems quite obvious. We have to get to the angel. During this section, the messages keep coming. It's no fairy tale. They're cold, fossilized existence, and no one sees for them that it's still like that. Under sands and under waters, and under regrets and under fears. And to wonder what it takes, where it takes to be the other. The angel and the Guardians keep pushing us back, but with the right timing, we finally reach it. And black and white images of European cities, construction sites, warehouses start flashing on the screen, while we still have control of our character. Then an image of a group of soldiers appears and we are suddenly a small white shapeless figure on a path, leaving behind a darkened body. We go forth and reach another winged being. During all of this, more messages appear. Wastes, not by whim, it's how it came to be, that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. Yet it walks, yet it is named. It is S. Abyssal somewhere. End. Next, Tower of No One. And we are back at the title screen. So what was any of that? I think it's quite clear that Abyssal Somewhere is trying to tell us a story, and it does give us a lot to go on, to be fair. But it's also pretty apparent that a lot of pieces are still missing, and what we do have is often conveyed through cryptic fragments. A lot more will hopefully come to light through the developer's next project, mentioned at the end of the game, Tower of No One. But there is one additional piece of media that gives us another snippet. On the developer's YouTube channel, we can find a video called A Tower of No One, 1893. Text appears over the painting of a blurred face. Long ago, the world felt elated under the rule of the angels. Yet amongst the rulers, amongst the servants, a sin was brought into place, and from it the earth suffered and was drowned. Some time ago, amidst the waging of war, the world was left alone. Yet all were unaware of this. Many turned to stone, and the rest fell into disarray. Those who tried lost their sight, yet one fled outside, and spelled the words. There was much to fear and to dread, and so fear overcame. They were so scared, they cried. The painting then moves back, and from it a white shape starts falling quite a ways, before coming to a violent stop. Though something suddenly happens and the shape is brought back. That's when we get an unexpectedly hype section portraying our armored protagonist and some other mysterious entity. So I'm not going to try and give you a thorough breakdown of Abyssal Somewhere's story and meaning. This is not a game theory style video. I want to share with you my point of view, tell you what I personally find so fascinating about it, and what it made me feel and think of. To me, playing Abyssal Somewhere is like reading the Iliad or the Theogony while somehow removing any historical knowledge we have of the last 3,000 years. A sort of grand self-mythologization through fragments, if you will. It speaks of wars, gods, titans, of heaven-made disasters brought upon mankind for sins whose meanings have been forgotten in time. It is the expulsion from Eden, interwoven with the Great Flood, with the Titanomachy, and with the topos of the traversal of the world of the dead, this last one being the only one that sees our character as the protagonist. We can, more or less, gather that at some point the world was at peace under the rule of the angels, but mankind's descent into sin brought the punishment of a great flood. Much later, the descendants of the survivors waged terrible wars, and so were abandoned by the higher powers. Left to their devices, the world fell into fear. But any of the details of the who, where, and when seem to collapse onto each other, piling on like sediments on the wall of a gigantic mountain. We have no solid context for any of this except what seems familiar to us as the players. We could read into this and find parallels to stories that might have inspired the artist. The giants that lay encased in concrete below the earth remind me of the Greek Titans, the old gods defeated by the Olympians and punished by them to lay trapped in Tartarus in the depths of the earth. Then there's the Great Flood, again a recurring event in many different mythologies, both present in the Greek one but also obviously in the Judeo-Christian one. And we have wars, of which, well, just pick the one you prefer really. Although if I have to guess, the latest one mentioned, which led to humanity being abandoned, and here I'm assuming that it is by God himself, and also by the images of modern European architecture, construction sites and warehouses, I'm feeling a parallel to the world wars of the last century. Although in that YouTube video we do have the indication of a year, 1893, which would mean I'm totally off on this one. There's also our protagonist's quest. It seems clear that he has some sort of objective, and from the words we see after falling into the land of Ka-di-Jirra, could it be literally that of traversing hell to reach heaven? If so, the obvious parallel here would be, among others, Dante's comedy. But the final goal here seems different from that of the Florentine crown. It is asking life itself why he is the only one alive. What is also interesting to me in the wording here is the implication that we're neither in hell nor in heaven at the moment. Which, well, the latter was quite obvious, I suppose, but it would have been easy to see this dark void landscape and think of the former. The next best association would be purgatory, but again, if we're alive, the only thing that would make sense is that this is the quote-unquote normal world, what used to be the world of the living, but after who knows how long following its destruction and abandonment. There's also that connection to the Sumerians, generally considered the oldest civilization of which we have a written language, which more than anything else points me towards the idea of this grand mythologization. The developer here seems to purposefully harken back to the earliest example we have recorded of actual historization, coming even before the mythologies we are familiar with. This gives the whole project a primordiality which indicates to me that, yes, the parallels to what we know might be here, but that this is fundamentally an alternative retelling of human history, seen in a concrete mythological form. Now, as to who our protagonist is, or who this is being mentioned at the end is, I don't feel like speculating. I'll wait for the Tower of No One. Now, I'll put down my pretentious essay glasses and level with you. I don't know if I'm reading too deep into this, and it might even come off as goofy to some, but this is what the game made me feel like talking about. Willingly or not, it did open this rabbit hole in my brain, so thanks for that. On another note, I obviously also can't fail to mention some other extra diegetic connections at play here. There seems to be a Dark Souls influence, what with a barely living knight waking up after who knows how long to a world of darkness and oblivion and struggling his way through by fighting powerful godlike beings. There's also some clear references to Silent Hill in this, with some of the fixed camera angles, the rusty wire mesh, and even with how the text itself appears. At points there are also some pretty strong Ico or Shadow of the Colossus vibes. They might be even very strong, but unfortunately I've never played the game, so I can't really comment. A source of influence that is 100% present though is Angel's Egg. From the theme of the flood, to the ghostly harpoon-wielding man, to the fragmented and mythological way in which the story itself is told, I think that the connection is undeniable. I want to end this section by praising the art direction of both the visual and the sound design. While the game is graphically quite simple when it comes to textures and models, the way in which everything is presented is so visceral and unique that it's guaranteed to stay with you for a long time. And the sound design is just crazy, from the incredibly noisy rusty gates to the low reverberations from the void, to the wind going batshit and peaking during the last fall, to the amazing ambient soundtrack which seems to come straight out of something like Ramles' Hole in the Heart, which is not a comparison I ever thought I'd make in a video. I can't praise it enough. But then again, I also often like stuff that almost makes my ears bleed, so take it with a pinch of salt. Abyssal Somewhere to me comes from the abyss of forgotten history, of conflict, and of the struggle of the human spirit with higher powers. A lot has been said about Kitty Horror Show's games at this point. There's even a very famous video by Jacob Geller covering the 4th entry in the Haunted City series, and I have no intention of trying to top that. So I'm not going to go over every entry and piece together the lore or the meaning behind them or anything like that. I'll talk about the whole project from a broader point of view. taking into consideration recurring themes, stylistic choices, and just overall vibes. And what I want to do is explain what I feel when I play these games, and why I find them so endlessly fascinating. First of all, what even is Haunted Cities? It's a project started in 2016 by developer Kitty Horror Show that has so far 4 entries, the latest one dating back to 2020. Each entry contains 4 different short games, except the first one, which has 3, mostly consisting of what we could buzzwordingly call horror-themed walking simulators. So what makes them so special? Well, for one, they're pretty experimental, and also they're kind of f***ed up. In every game you have a different area to explore, each one telling its own story through different means, like notes, characters, or outright walls of text invading your screen. The games can range from cute pixelated adventures to nightmarish and distorted hellscapes. What is very consistent throughout all of them, though, is that we seem to arrive to these places when it's already way too late. Everything has already happened. We come to explore the remnants of worlds that have already ended to some degree. Our objective is simply that of putting together what went down and in the process feel the pain of the past. Technically, all of them are pretty paper-thin experiences, almost skeletal when it comes to mechanics. You walk around, click on notes or characters to get information, and that's mostly it. So how can something so basic be so interesting? Well, Kitty Horror Show somehow manages to create such an incredible, hopeless and unique atmosphere in each entry that they inevitably suck you in. This is helped in no small part by her writing, which can go from pretty subtle and scrappy to poetic and mysterious to disgusting and very edgy, with themes ranging from long-lost loves to the recovery of memories of past civilizations to insectoid gods and extreme body horror. To give you some examples, one of my favorite entries is Leech Bowl, in which you awaken in a dark and empty city with nothing around but buildings, garbage, and boxes of plastic bottles filled with blood. The only thing you can really do is pick up these bottles and throw them against the buildings, marking them. This sometimes leads to messages appearing inscribed on the faces of the buildings, directed to you. They apparently come from creatures that live below the earth who wait for nothing else than to devour you. So you might start putting together some things and get an idea of what might be happening here. This Leech Bowl town was either populated by these blood-eating creatures or the people living here had some sort of pact with them. You can explore a few interiors and find disturbing posters telling you how good blood is for you, and see that all the stock of produce is just more blood bottles, which, by the way, are indicated as leech meals. The game gives you just enough. You feel constantly watched and wait for the moment in which the leeches will come for you, but it doesn't seem to happen, though I won't spoil the ending, which is kinda key. But it also leaves you with so many questions. You want to know what exactly happened here, what kind of society was this, and what role did the leeches and the people have in it? Were the humans enslaved by them and made to constantly produce a stable supply of sustenance in the form of their own blood? Well, you might never figure it out. Again, so little to go on, but just enough to make this simple little game feel so much bigger than it is. Another great example is Monastery, in which you explore, you guessed it, an empty monastery, trying to uncover its dark secrets. Long story short, you start putting together that the monks were not really into the Jesus stuff, but more so into a terrible insect deity for which they started to experiment with human-insect hybridization. And you'll see that insects, especially worms, wasps, and ticks, are almost a constant in Kitty's work. You go around trying to find keys and knives and get access to new areas. You learn more and more about their religion, and at a certain point, you can find the monks themselves, enclosed in fragile and bloody cocoons hanging from the ceiling. They await the end of their metamorphosis and the arrival of their goddess. You slowly come to realize that it's too late to do anything. The world outside is infested by these insects, and their maddening thousands of millions of buzzing wings cover the sky. You don't have a choice. The bloody cocoons are another recurring element. We find them in the same collection, Haunted Cities 2, in Scarlet, another empty town of which you'll have to uncover the secrets, and in which you can find big bloody cocoons stuck in people's otherwise abandoned houses. And all you can do is wonder what exactly happened. I also love Ghost Lake, in which you get in a car and explore a dark hamlet through messages left in bubbles for you by someone. All of this while the titanic silhouette of a skeleton emerging from the lake looms in the distance. It's never clear what really went down. Our messenger tells us of a small town in which the people stopped going outside and the doors to their houses scabbed over. They used to produce something in their factory, their only export, And they tried to build a giant tunnel, but things started coming out from the ground, so they retreated to their homes. All that is left now is the remnants of a forgotten place in the middle of nowhere, through which no one passes and whose inhabitants are forever encased in their own houses. You might almost start making a personal connection with whoever is leaving these green bubbles, learning about how much they hated this town, of how they struggled as an outsider in society and as the only one who could see how wrong everything was, but now they're gone too. Maybe taken over like all the others, or perhaps they managed to get away? Well, if you play it yourself, you might get a pretty clear idea. There's also Tenement, a floating fragment of a city in which you can speak to the citizens who look just like shades phasing in and out of existence. They give you slivers of their personal memories, their thoughts and feelings. And if you jump off the edge, you just end up in dark labyrinthine sewers from which the only way out is back up. Each time you emerge, the city changes, becoming more and more corrupted. Geller goes into detail about the meaning behind all of this, so I won't repeat what he already said. So, do you understand now what I mean when I say that we always come to these places when it's already way too late? We always find things in disrepair and fragments, violently distorted, ghostly and lifeless. It's like some sort of apocalyptic event, either on a global or small scale, has already happened, and we're just an observer interacting with the ruins. What I've explained about the mythologization and abyssal somewhere also applies pretty strongly in this case. We read of terrible deities and creatures changing the world and people therein. We have but pieces of testimonies giving us a glimpse into what these worlds used to be and into the sick ways in which they were corrupted. I find that the perfect example of this are the two obviously connected games, Pente and Rhodes. They look quite similar when it comes to style, with these giant swords sticking up from the ground, and with the general architecture presented to us. They feel ancient, mythological, like something out of Ovid's Metamorphosis, telling of a world so distant from us yet filled with the same emotions, mainly love, fear and despair. Especially in Rhodes, we are told of a tragic love story, deeply personal and intimate, but we don't know who the protagonists are. We merely have signs of their relationship. And what do you know, in Pente, if we fall from the small island on which we stand, we end up on a sandbank at night with giant obelisks rising from the ground, surrounded by an infinite ocean. I wouldn't be surprised if this little level was of some inspiration for Abyssal Somewhere, especially when you walk up to the obelisks and notice that they seem to be covered in, and again I don't want to overstep my boundaries, what looks to me like Sumerian cuneiform. Overall, I find Kitty Horror Show's work to be uniquely explorative, mixing deeply intimate stories with such a universal literary epic feel. It's art that constantly tugs at your emotions, but in such spots that you didn't even know you had. For all its mystery and obscurity, it still somehow manages to speak directly to you, the player, sometimes making you want to turn away your gaze, not fearing the use of extremely unsettling visuals and sounds, and always reaching for something so much bigger than the apparently simple sum of its parts. It's exactly works like these that make me constantly fall in love with indie developers. Are these even games? Or are they more so art pieces wearing the skin of video games? And does it even matter? This will obviously not be for everybody, seeing as even when it comes to the world of walking sims, her projects still appear starved of any real meat. The only thing you can do is bite into these withered scenes where the air is so thin that it gets hard to breathe and your head starts spinning, and then let them go and fade away, but still always feeling that small wound that they left inside of your heart. Haunted Cities also comes from the abyss of forgotten history, but a history which reminds us that it's made of individual stories, tragedies, pains and emotions forgotten by time, from the abyss of despair, over which fortunately a dim light still seems to shine in the form of empathy. Mroi is a little game that came out recently from developer Dosogi. This one, too, is free on itch, and I'd advise you to immediately go play it and give the creators some love. It is, in the simplest terms, a dream exploration game in the vein of LSD Dream Emulator. Differently from its historic predecessor though, it also tells a story, and a very intimate one at that. On the title screen we can see a pack of pills, Latuda. These are used to treat schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. From the top, a blurb of text appears. People see me as a miserable thing, stuck in the world of my own creation. I pity them. I am granted freedom. I am blessed to create and to see what the depths of my subconscious have to offer. I am not bound to the physical. I do not care for your world. You have nothing of use. And this gives us already a pretty good idea of what we're going to experience. When we start, we are greeted by this. On the left we have a timer, unintelligible symbols, false self repeated 3 times. On the right we have the text, "You are now dreaming. This place is abandoned 1." And on the bottom a face split down the middle. This is already some crazy presentation from the get-go, especially when you consider that the only useful elements in this HUD are the timer and the place. We can wander around this frozen abandoned landscape and enter a building. In here we see a white glowing figure levitating above the ground. It looks like a young girl with some kind of tubes coming out of her chest. We can speak to her. Hello. Hi there. Are you like real? I keep seeing you here. Are you? I'd like to believe that. Same here. I've been under the impression I might have gone a bit insane. Never had such messed up dreams before. This is my dream, though. Usually there's no one here but me. Oh, that does explain some things. Go on. I might have been so lonely that I made you up to feel less trapped. You seemed too human to me, and I never had recurring dreams before. I think you got it all wrong. I'm no one's creation. You seem to be out of place. Meanwhile, I had dreams like these for years. Just another trick of my brain seems more likely. So I guess we just have to agree to disagree for now. Guess so. Huh. We can then climb to the roof of this building and we see something in the corner. It's a door, just standing there. If we touch it, we're transported to a different place. Ward. A strange space with low ceilings and stone walls. Windows look outside but are covered in metallic mesh. Here we find the same girl from before. Surprised to see me? A bit. Believe me yet? I need more convincing, I'm afraid. Bitch, I will not beef with a delusion. You're the one getting all angry. What's your name then? It's Elpis. I bet it's not. Yeah, but I do like how it sounds. I won't give you my personal information that easily. Afraid I'll dox you? You what? Never mind. Yeah, I'm not really up to date with that internet stuff you do. It's better this way, trust me on that. Is that why you're so messed up? What was that? Nothing, I'm just messing with you. You're very easy to provoke. Have fun hanging in here alone then. I'm going. It's Lisa, by the way. Somehow, I already knew that. And so off we go again. While walking away we see a figure. A man standing in the corner, his face blacked out, with a single shining eye trained on us. We can't interact with this person, and after a while it just disappears into thin air. So we go through another door and are transported to a new place. Rooms. A dark collection of niches with mattresses and lamps strewn around, and with a mirror, in which we can take a look at ourselves. We see that our face is missing, replaced with what looks like a blue texture with white eyes on it. Here we can also find a computer. If we interact with it, we enter colors, a punch to the eyes more than a room, with a bed, a desk, and a Half-Life poster on the wall. We can't do anything here but walk out of the door, which just leads us back to the previous area. If we go down the last hallway in the back of this big room, we see a terrifying face glowing and apparently smiling at us wide-mouthed. If we get closer, we end up in loneliness, a collection of buildings with platforms between them. So here I'll stop going beat by beat and just tell you more about the whole game. As I've said before, it's a sort of dream exploration simulator. We traverse these surreal landscapes to find some sort of doorway to the next one. In some of them we'll find Elpis, and we can speak to her. In others we might get either a comment from our protagonist or just nothing at all. You realize soon that the doors always lead to the same spaces and you'll have to figure out which ones to take to progress. You might wonder what is up with the timer. Well, if it runs out, we just wake up. All the dreamy screen overlays now gone, we just see our room. A disgusting mess with full trash bags strewn around, a closet, a desk with 2 computers on it, and our bed. All we do when we wake up here is take our medication and go back to sleep, starting another dream cycle. The objective of the game, though not explicitly stated, is that of finding every room in which Elpis shows up and just exhaust every dialogue with her. Seems simple, but it can get quite confusing quite easily. The dreamscapes themselves are one stranger than the other. Abandoned places, pools, ocean floors, cosmic abstract wireframes, flesh-covered structures, and more. The focus here, aside from just taking in these strange spaces, obviously, is the relationship that builds between our protagonist and Elpis. We start learning more and more about ourselves and about her. For example, we learn that we used to be an artist, but we stopped drawing. That we used to have friends, but for some reason we decided to become a recluse. That we suffer from schizophrenia and that's why we take the medication. That Elpis has been in an accident and that might be the reason she appears in our dreams. I don't want to reveal too much because it is a short experience and it's very much worth it going through yourself. We also realize that we can see the spying man at different locations, and Lissa mentions a few times that she feels like she's being watched. We'll also find out more about this by playing to the end. Mroi feels very intimate, almost too much so, both through the language used and the information shared. It's like a glimpse into the mind of a person with a debilitating mental health struggle at their worst. It is an exploration of this. Elpis keeps questioning us about the way we lead our existence, hiding in our dirty room, doing nothing but medicating and sleeping in the hope of finding some solace in our dreams, which become more and more unstable and disturbed by outside presences. All of this complicated by our protagonist's schizophrenia and possible bipolar disorder, which will make us often question how much of what is happening is just a projection of her mind. Even though Lissa and Elpis struggle in their dynamic, especially given the former's volatile mood, their relationship ends up being quite sweet and refreshing. They manage to find some form of common ground in their personal journeys, some comfort in each other amongst these strange and at times disturbing dreamscapes. The whole game is honestly beautiful, from the stylistic choices of the HUD to the presentation of the different locations to the beautiful music and sound design. It's incredibly strange to me that this has so far flown under the radar. It's not as dark as the previous two entries, at least not in that mythological and cosmic sense. This feels much more personal and focused, and it can get quite dark in that sense, especially given the bluntness of some of the dialogues, which never stray away from showing the ugliness of the protagonist's mental state. In this sense, it can even be harrowing at times, and in the end it can definitely leave you with a bitter taste in your mouth, which honestly only makes me wish for some sort of continuation to this project. Also, if for some reason the developer sees this, I'm not sure if this is only my problem, but since the patch I can't seem to reach the endgame, because the area, again, doesn't appear to be accessible now. But again, might just be a me problem. Either way, please keep going, this is beautiful work and it deserves to be recognized, and people deserve to experience it. Mroi comes from the abyss of loneliness, reclusion, trauma and entrapment into one's own head, a space that should be under our own control but that can sometimes revolt against us, leading into a spiral that can seem inescapable. Just remember that you're not alone, even though it can feel that way in your worst moments. So here we are, Interminal. I wanted to end on a different, more hopeful note, with something calming instead of disquieting. This will seem like it comes out of left field. Interminal is barely anything. It's one of the simplest games I've ever seen. You get the whole point in like a minute, and still, for some reason, I keep coming back to it, time and time again, and it never completely leaves my mind. Do you miss airports? Do you miss that wonderful feeling of negotiating through duty-free shop mazes, running through suffocating perfume clouds while trying to desperately find your gate? Great! Well, in Interminal there are no gates to worry about. You are here forever and you can navigate, smell perfumes and shop as long as you want. Truly an architect's masterpiece and CEO's dream. Or you can just watch the planes go by. Where are the toilets, you ask? The legends say people who went looking never came back. Interminal is a small blurb of a game made by Nothki and Ferran Bartomeu, in which you explore a procedurally generated infinite airport. The only thing you can do is just walk and look around, pick up perfumes and smell them, and then decide if you want to buy them or not. That's it. And somehow it feels like a little piece of magic to me. I don't know if it's the mountains in the background framed by the beautiful light of an eternal sunset, if it's the planes departing and landing, the cute soundtrack by Yenteng, or the shininess of the floors, the strange and random descriptions of the fragrances scent profiles like "smells like hibiscus with a big chicken," or "smells like mysterious postman's bag deep fried using cocky apple," or "smells like moist car seat and more than necessary amount of pumpkin spice," etc. You get the idea. Somehow, all of it comes together into something that just sticks with me. From what I gather, the game was made in 2020, during that whole lockdown business. And that explains the initial question, do you miss airports? Obviously, airports are the perfect image of travel and of moving far from home, a possibility that was precluded to many that year. But they're also contradictory spaces, just like this game. Would anyone miss the airports themselves? Like, does anyone actually enjoy being there? Always chock full of people, noisy, full of annoying security controls, etc. They're also a giant representation of consumerism with their infinite amount of shops of all kinds. Well, I don't think that it's a coincidence that Interminal has no people in it at all, and that you can buy any strange perfume you wish without worrying about spending money. If they were actually like this, then yes, I'd totally miss airports. There's something so calming about just watching and listening to these planes landing, bathed in sunset, while not worrying about anything. Ironically, you never see anyone enter or leave these planes, and you yourself can never leave this place and don't even have a destination. You're just stuck watching others, or nobody, fly around the world. The game is so bare bones that it manages to make the tiniest things somehow beautiful. You can sometimes hear a peculiar sound. You realize that it's the flight board flipping around the destinations. In all this stillness, this tiny piece of change of movement becomes unexpectedly powerful. Interminal comes from the abyss of nothingness, of listlessly watching as the world goes by, of being aimless and nostalgic. But somehow, in the end, it still feels like everything will be alright. Thank you for watching, and see you, space friends.